Arizona football is in the Alamo Bowl against Oklahoma. Remember the Alamo, but will Oklahoma remember the Alamo? All that and more on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I am Mike Luke. All right, we're going to break down Arizona, Oklahoma. Meanwhile, I have Mike Breen along with Doc Rivers and Doris Burke to the left of me. So again, but I will stay focused here on Arizona football. All right, now the Alamo Bowl is here. I've been to the Alamo before when I was very, very young. And you probably don't care about any of that, so I'm not going to get into that. But Arizona football, if I were to tell you before the year that Arizona was going to go 9-3 and put together probably one of the top 3 seasons in school history, you would say you're an idiot. And but I didn't say that, so therefore I can't claim credit for it. But I will say this. A big part of why Arizona is here, well, I will say the overwhelming part of it is here is, well, 2 things. Jedd Fisch knows what he's doing. He's a fisher of recruits. He brings in good players and he develops them. It's weird watching NFL scouts at NFL or at U of A practices when we are not used to seeing any of that. We don't generally see any NFL scouts at U of A practices because there is no reason to be here. There is a lot different reasons now. The other one, my guy Noah Fifita. I understand I would have voted for Jedd Fisch for conference coach of the year. But the one pushback that I do hear from people is saying, well, you know, he stayed with Jayden de Laura for 5 games. I can't argue with that. Jayden de Laura did some good things. He's moving on. Wish him nothing but the best. Glad he's moving on. Noah Fifita is obviously a much, much better football player. And that has been evident. He comes in here and again, he comes in and he basically kind of runs the show. You watch him and you say, man, this guy doesn't really play like a freshman out there. Granted, he's a redshirt freshman, but he has an understanding of the game, a grasp of the game, and you can tell, you can give a lot of that credit to his pop, so Les Fifita, who been coaching him since obviously at a very early age, and there was certainly a connection with this team, and I think that's something that you also have to put in. You look at the 4 players they got out of Servite High School, 3 of them have already been game changers for the U of A. And the 4th one, Kean Burnett, is probably a year away from being really good as well. But this is this was a transformational recruiting class in U of A football history. Again, just going off the top of my head, all the players who were in that 2022 class: Noah Fifita, Tetaroa McMillan, Jacob Manu, Jonas Savanea, Ephesians Prysock, Takario Davis, Jacob Manu, Wendell Moy. I can keep going. A lot of players, a lot of these guys are going to play in the NFL. And that's kind of how Arizona got to this situation, is having that class that was able to put Arizona in the position to be able to succeed in the manner in which it did. But this all obviously happened because once Noah Fifita took over against Stanford and led Arizona to a touchdown, then he iced the game away. And Arizona was the better for the wear, and he never really looked back. I mean, against Washington, he had some up and down moments, but he also didn't play poorly. Again, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and again, he didn't have kind of the cataclysmic, game-changing bad plays that Jayden de Laura was doing. And then against USC, I think that was really his coming-out party. Being at that USC game, you knew up close that, man, this is a little bit different. First of all, Arizona, from a talent perspective, didn't look that much different than USC, which is a huge departure. But a lot of that also is when you've got a defense that can play complementary football off of the offense, knowing that the offense is going to put you in a position to succeed. That's exactly what Noah Fifita did. Again, I think in that game, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick in triple overtime was absolutely incredible. Outplayed Caleb Williams, who's probably going to be the first pick in the draft. So there's obviously that. Now, Arizona then ran the table and beat some very good teams in the process. Destroyed Washington State, Oregon State, UCLA, Utah, ASU. Nobody wants any part of Arizona. And we're going to find out if Oklahoma does. Now, listen, I'm ecstatic to be going to the Big 12. Oklahoma's obviously leaving the Big 12. But the one thing that I think people need to keep an eye on is how does the Arizona talent look on the field? That, to me, is a big part of it. I wanted to play Oklahoma as opposed to Oklahoma State just because I wanted to see Arizona against another team that is really, really good from the across the board on offense and defense. I wanted to be able to see that and just kind of see how does it look? How does everything kind of play its way out? That would have been fine against Oklahoma State, but obviously there's a different level of talent between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And on top of that, we can get some good bonus points with our good friends joining the Big 12 who are not happy with their Oklahoma stablemates by beating Oklahoma on the way out. Now, a big part of this is going to also be how badly does Oklahoma want to be here. I don't care how badly Oklahoma wants to be here. All I need is Arizona to get the win. Arizona's had 2 years in its franchise's history where they've won 10-plus games. Arizona is going to be in that position to be able to get 10-plus wins. And not only are they going to be able to be in that position, I expect them to win this game, and a variety of reasons why, which we'll get into. But you also got to remember, this would be such a springboard into next year, because Arizona's probably going to go into next year. If they're not going to be a preseason top 10 team, they're going to be somewhere around 12 to 13, which has not happened in, since 1999? Been a long time. So there's a lot of that's in play. But now let's talk about offensively then for Arizona. Arizona's got to score points. A big part of why Arizona was able to win games with Noah Fifita taking over for Jayden de Laura was that they were scoring points, but they weren't turning the ball over. And a big part of scoring points and not turning the ball over is being able to hit the open receiver. How many times did it feel like with Jayden de Laura where he was just looking at one wide receiver and nobody else was open? But then once Noah Fifita comes in, Noah Fifita is spreading the ball around. Malachi Riley's getting involved. Not only is Malachi Riley getting involved, you also have Kevin Green Jr. Shout out Kevin Green Sr. if you're listening. A.J. Jones getting some catches. And then obviously Teteroa McMillan and Jacob Cowing were getting their catches as well. And Tanner McLaughlin, the other T-Mac, his production certainly did not go by the wayside. And again, when you've got those kind of weapons, you've got to be able to have a quarterback that can get you the ball. And that is certainly what Arizona was able to do with Noah Fifita. He's able to get all of those guys the ball. And it also played the running game as well, where it became a little bit more interesting. And we're going to talk about the running game and what it means next. But first, eBay Motors. All right, eBay Motors. Here's the cool thing about eBay Motors. How many of you have taken your car to a vehicle shop and said, man, well, you know what? I'm going to get screwed out of about $500 because they're going to tell me these prices are way more than they should be. eBay Motors says enough of that. We are in the year 2023 going into 24. Get your parts from us. We will save you money. Cut out the middleman. Get your parts, then bring it to a mechanic, a leader that you trust. ebaymotors.com, the right parts, the right fit, the right prices. Again, as I always tell you, you'll thank me later. Save a lot of money. John Schuster, the great John Schuster, the venerable John Schuster, has gone through ebaymotors.com before, and it has worked out just splendid for him. If it can work for Schuster, it can work for anybody. Check it out, eBay Motors. We'll be right back with you. Thanks for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, we talked about the passing game. Now, we've got to keep something in mind here. Jordan Morgan, first-round pick Jordan Morgan. We're not used to saying that first-round pick, so-and-so, so-and-so. Jordan Morgan is a first-round pick. He will be sitting out the bowl game. I have no problem with that. He bet on himself after tearing his knee up last year, came back, played incredibly well. He is going to be a very high pick. I have absolutely no problem with him sitting this game out. I think he should sit this game out. So what does that mean? We're going to be able to see some other players in play. Jonas Sabanea obviously is going to be a tackle. I would imagine he's going to be your left tackle next year. Joe Borjon probably going to get some snaps there. But I'm also curious to see what happens with Raymond Polito. Raymond Polito, shout out Robert Polito. Kid that was committed to Alabama for the longest time, came in, and once he was able to get healthy, all of a sudden, the line really kind of picked up its pace. Not that it wasn't good before, but you could tell the Polito kind of had a next level, a little bit of talent in there that not a lot of the other players had. Polito was a very, very nice addition in there. So I think that's what you're going to be looking at from your 3 tackle positions. Then Wendell Moy, he's going to be a stalwart at guard. Not only will he be a stalwart at guard, he will be a stalwart at guard as long as he is here. That was another nice little scouting by Jed Fish and staff. And then we can't forget it, Leif Magnuson. Leif played very well this year. Leif started 5 or 6 games. Leif's going to be in that rotation. Big fan of Leif. So Arizona's got some depth options there that I think you could keep an eye on. And then Josh Baker on the at the center position. It's been solid all year. Not sure he ever plays in the NBA. I don't think he's going to play in the NBA. I can actually assure you he won't play in the NBA. But I don't know that he's going to play in the NFL either. But either way, that doesn't mean that he can't be a really good college player. And they need to keep opening up holes for Arizona's running back triumvirate. Arizona's got a very nice little trio. First and foremost, Jonah Coleman. The 5'8", 225-pound bowling ball has been he's been Arizona's best running back this year. And I think that he needs to have a huge game against Oklahoma. A big reason he needs to have a huge game against Oklahoma is because I think that Arizona, when they play their best, it's when they are running the ball out. And so he's been that guy. Not only has he been that guy, but Michael Wiley, it has allowed to use him in more of a pass-catching role. I believe Michael Wiley, now listen, he was injured this year, so that kind of stinks. But when he played, he certainly showed that he was a very good pass catcher, and I think that is going to translate into the next level. But I think between those guys, DJ Williams, maybe salting the ball away as well, Arizona's got a lot of opportunities there to be able to make score some points. Now, defensively, Oklahoma's fascinating because generally when you think Oklahoma, you think of defensive lines that can, kind of overpower you or, can get a lot of sacks. That's not the case this year. Oklahoma only had 19 sacks this season. Arizona, meanwhile, almost doubled that up not doubled, but had 10 more sacks. And Arizona's probably got a better pass rush. Now, you certainly can't take Oklahoma for granted when it comes to that. And you got a DB with multiple pick sixes. So again, it's not like that there's a massive talent disparity, but it's also not the kind of talent disparity that I think that we're used to seeing when Arizona plays a team like an Oklahoma. Now, defensively, then, here's where it gets fascinating for the Wildcats. You've obviously Dylan Gabriel, quarterback for Oklahoma, has moved on, going to go play for Oregon. But I actually think that this was a good move for Oklahoma because you've got the top-rated quarterback in the entire country from last year out of Texas. It's going to be his team going forward. And I'm a big fan if you know that, again, it's not like your season is lost, but if you know that next year is going to be kind of the for lack of a better term, you want to get this quarterback's feet wet. And it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds because keep in mind, you've already got with Nick Anderson at wide receiver, you've got a big game breaker, believe he was committed to Oregon. And then Drake Stoops, you all obviously know that name. It's an interesting running back duo where I think with Arizona, it's going to be fascinating to see how the corners play because Jed Fish talked about it from day one. He wanted to have bigger corners. He wanted to have a Takario Davis and an Ephesians Prysock, players that are 6'3", 6'4", as opposed to kind of the 5'9", 5'10" players. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Again, Nick Anderson not used to going against cornerbacks that are about as good as him or about as tall as him. That's going to be the case here. And both these players for the U of A are probably going to play in the NFL. So it's going to be a nice little test for both of them. Now, a big part of it, too, is making Oklahoma's passing game uncomfortable, and that's something, too, that I think Arizona fans have to be very pleasantly surprised with in that Arizona this year had, averaging 2.5 sacks per game. There were, I think Jed Fish's first year, I want to say they averaged 1 or something like that. So, and it was from a variety of different angles. We've obviously talked a lot about Taylor Upshaw coming in from Colorado, getting 8.5 sacks, but then Jacob Manu getting 6.5 sacks at that linebacker position. And then a big part of it, too, is the play from the defensive lineman up front. Big Bill Norton, BBN. Big Bill Norton will be coming back next year. Talk about an early Christmas present for U of A football fans. You talk about a player that is probably a little bit undersold just because the stats aren't there. But Big Bill Norton has been a leader in the trenches. He has been very, very good for Arizona. And I think Arizona fans are rightfully ecstatic about him coming back because, again, at about 6'5", 355, he is a huge guy. And he can take up multiple blockers. He has done exactly what he is supposed to do. That's going to be a big game for him with Oklahoma. Because, again, if he can take up multiple blockers, then inside you've also got your Tia Saveas, your Tyler Manoas, your Jacob Kangaikas, just a lot of players that are just bigger, more explosive, athletic dudes. And then with those guys taking up blocks, then it becomes a little bit easier for Isaiah Ward, for Russell Davis to be able to make plays off the edge. Overall, though, in the past, when Arizona has had good teams, especially under Rich Rod, felt a little fluky. Didn't really feel like it was sustainable. It felt like you were relying on gadgetry, on a coach putting players in position to succeed, whereas Jed Fish has a roster where everybody just kind of looks better than everybody else. And I think that's why Arizona's been able to sustain this streak in the manner in which they have, is because they've just been bigger, they've been more physical, and not only have they done that, they've been able to kind of wear teams down, and you really don't see that generally from Arizona football. And on the secondary, we got to give the return of the great one, Dwayne Aquina, a lot of credit. I told people that didn't Dwayne Aquina was a very bad offensive coordinator here at the U of A, but he was also a very good defensive mind. And so when he was coming back as a special analyst, I told Shear, who didn't know who he was because Shear didn't even move to Tucson until 2002. I told him, I said, this is very, very good news. And then Shear said, an old white guy that can't recruit. No, I'm good. And I said, you are wrong. Jason Shear was wrong. Dwayne Aquina was right. But either way, he's been fantastic. He puts everybody in the position they need. And I think the working relationship between him and Johnny Nansen has been something that you got to credit both guys with. Because, when you're a person of Dwayne Aquina's caliber, a lot of times you're coming in and I don't know that you're going to be okay being a special assistant. I mean, you've got a background, you've got a resume that is not incumbent with that. He has not obviously been that. He has obviously been more than okay with the role that he has been put in. And Johnny Nansen, a lot of DCs would not be cool with dealing with another guy. They want to have their own spot. They've had a very good working relationship. Now, on the other side, we break it down, how I see this game unfolding and the meaning for the University of Arizona. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats, and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now it is time to break down how I see this game unfolding. I'm back in the A. I am going to pick Arizona to win this game, and not only am I going to pick Arizona to win this game, I think Arizona is going to win this game 34-24. I think for a variety of reasons, it's going to be interesting, but I think Arizona wants this game a little bit more. And listen, Jordan Morgan's out, which is obviously a blow to Arizona, but Oklahoma is also missing a ton of players, especially along the line, that I don't think that they thought they were going to miss. Jackson Arnold's going to be interesting to see what he can do. But I think Arizona's ready for this moment, and I think this entire team knows that if they win this game, especially on national TV against a blue blood program like in Oklahoma, that you could really be going into next season with college football playoff aspirations. Because keep in mind, it's moving to 12. You go into the Big 12. You return most of your players, I think 18 to 22 starters. You're going to be the pick by a lot of people to win the conference next year. And that's something that I don't think that you can really minimize. So this has a lot to do with, I think this coaching staff, I think this roster is knows more than anybody what's at hand. And for the individual players, it's also kind of a nice little jump. Noah Fafita. He's already showing up on some Heisman lists for next year, and it's deservedly so. Teteroa McMillan, he's only going to be a junior next year, but everybody knows that he will be off to the NFL after next year. He is what a first-round pick wide receiver is supposed to look like. And a lot of different players. Your Jonas Avenea, kind of the same way along the line. But if Arizona is able to win this game, I think it's difficult to make the case that they are not a preseason top 10 team next year. And not only are they not a preseason top 10 team, I think they're a team that, like I said, I think you could see them maybe compete for a national title. We want Alabama. We want Alabama. We don't want anybody else. We want Alabama. Bring on Nick Saban. He's not ready for Jedd Fisch. But like I said, I think that Arizona is going to win this game 34-24, something along those lines. And I think it will also be a nice little look for Arizona to send Oklahoma off to the SEC with their tails between their legs. But again, like I said, big game for Arizona, obviously as well for Jedd Fisch. You never know in this day and age with coaching football. Jedd's going to be here next year for sure, but you certainly don't know about after that. Maybe this is the year, and then this is the year after where Jedd Fisch finds out or shows people that he can be the Lute Olson of Arizona football, where you go to a program that had a little bit of history, not much, and you're able to kind of rework that into your own image. And again, if you go to a place like Florida or something, I totally get that's a dream job. But you're always going to be in the shadow of Urban Meyer and Steve Spurrier. If you're able to do what you're doing here at Arizona, you're going to be that guy. You're going to have the one that's going to be the statue right by Lute Olson. People rightfully give Fred Snowden credit, but let's be honest here. This was Lute Olson's basketball program. But on that note, 34-24, back in the A. We will be back with you tomorrow. Like I said, great time to be an Arizona sports fan. Basketball and football is rolling. And like I said, get in on eBay Motors right now. Beat John Schuster to the punch. But on that note, thanks for listening to Locked On Wildcats. We will be back with you tomorrow.